Hey guys, tonight we drift into the deepest part of the medieval night, not the cold wind outside or the flicker of a candle about to die, but something softer, stranger. You lie on a thin straw mattress in a stone-walled cell, wrapped in a woolen blanket that smells faintly of beeswax and cabbage. Somewhere nearby, the chapel bell tolls once, then goes quiet. Your breath fogs the air. Your eyelids droop. And soon, just like the monks, the nuns, the peasants, the lords, you begin to dream. But these dreams aren't just figments. In the Middle Ages, dreams were messages, signs, warnings, sometimes divine, sometimes devilish. They were portals into realms of morality, prophecy, and maybe even scandal. If you dreamt of fire, was it hellfire or a sign of passion? A flying lion, was that Saint Mark or a feather breaking? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a monastery, one of those old ones with thick walls and wooden beams darkened by centuries of incense. It's silent, save for the scratch of quills. A monk leans over a vellum manuscript, ink-stained fingers steady, eyes tired. He's recording a dream, not his, but someone else's. A bishop, perhaps. Or a pilgrim who claimed to see the Virgin Mary wrapped in stars. In the early medieval centuries, particularly the 9th through 12th, dreams involving saints weren't seen as mere brain static, they were revelations. If Saint Cuthbert showed up in your dream and handed you a fish, you didn't just wake up hungry. You told your abbot. He probably told a scribe. And before long, your midnight fish became a mini miracle in the next chronicle. Dreams of saints were among the most documented, especially among the literate clergy. Sometimes they were consoling visions of peace, light, gentle voices. Other times, saints appeared with swords or fire, chastising the dreamer for laziness, gluttony, or skipping prayers. It was, in a way, divine her management. But not all saintly dreams were sweet. Imagine closing your eyes and suddenly you're walking with Saint Michael, sword drawn, across a burning field of souls. He turns to you, and in a voice that is both thunder and whisper, he asks why you haven't confessed in 3 weeks. Now imagine waking up from that. There's a famous account, likely embroidered with time, of a woman who dreamt of Saint Margaret being devoured by a dragon, only for the saint to burst forth, unharmed, radiant. The story spread, especially among pregnant women, who began praying to Saint Margaret during labor. The imagery, not subtle, but very medieval. Of course, historians still argue whether these dreams were spontaneous or retrofitted to fit a pious agenda. Did the dream come first, or did the storyteller massage it into something more useful? And yet, there's something undeniably touching about these visions. You, curled on your blanket, may not believe in radiant saints gliding through your dreams. But if you lived in 1147, and you saw one, especially one pointing at you with glowing fingers, well, you'd be confessing your sins by morning. Some monks even kept dream journals, albeit framed in theological language. They noted when the dream occurred, what fasts had preceded it, and whether the moon was waxing or waning. Yes, moon phase was a factor. So was whether you'd eaten eels. Oh, and speaking of eels, there's a 13th century text that warns against eating too many before bed, as they attract serpentine dreams, which were sometimes interpreted as demonic, and sometimes as romantic. Again, medieval symbolism, a buffet of contradiction. But not every dream of saints came with gold halos. Some were ambiguous. A cloaked figure in a garden. A woman, crying blood. A child speaking in tongues. The medieval mind, trained to read allegory in everything from psalms to sunsets, spun stories out of every strange symbol. The line between dream and vision, blurry, and blurry was good. A vision meant purpose. Dreams were messy, but visions had weight. The more vivid, the more likely it came from God. Or so they hoped. Of course, if your dream seemed too vivid, the local bishop might suggest it came from the other guy. Lucifer was thought to plant dreams too, you see. Especially seductive ones. But more on that later. For now, back in your drafty cell, you begin to feel the pull of sleep. The wax candle flickers lower. Outside, a distant owl hoots once, twice. You close your eyes and imagine Saint Jerome not holding a book, but standing beside your bed, whispering laden psalms into your dreams. And just before you drift off completely, you remember something strange. There's an old text where a monk claims he dreamt of an angel who snored. You wake in a different bed, now scratchier, noisier, and with a lingering scent of damp earth and livestock. A low ceiling of rough-hewn beams presses down on you. The air is thick with the mingled warmth of human breath and the sharp tang of hay. You're in a peasant's cottage, likely somewhere in 13th century England. Outside, a dog barks. Inside, someone snores like they're strangling a jug. You curl into the scratchy wool blanket, the straw poking through like disapproving fingers. In this world, dreams are more than stories, they are warnings, omens, maybe even glimpses of heaven or hell. And you're about to have a doozy. In rural medieval Europe, most peasants believed dreams were sent by supernatural forces. Sometimes angels, sometimes demons, sometimes Uncle Gerald, who'd been dead 5 winters but still knew how to throw a tantrum in your sleep. These folks didn't have books or access to formal education. Their dream knowledge came from local lore, traveling, prayers, or the odd gossipy neighbor who once saw a ghost eating apples in a barn, which if you were wondering was a sign of an early frost. Now, tonight's dream, you're floating. Not flying, just sort of hovering like a confused goose. Below, your family's ox stares up at you and mutters something that might be Latin or Welsh. You land in a muddy field, where the moon smiles with too many teeth. You wake sweating. Congratulations. According to local legend, you've either been blessed by the Virgin Mary or hexed by a hedge witch. Could go either way. In this context, dreams weren't analyzed for personal insight the way we do today. No one was saying, that field represents your fear of commitment. No. The field was the field, and if you saw it flooded, you ran to the priest the next morning and told him to bless your barley. But still there was structure. People believe that dreams were filtered through the architecture of the soul. The lower dreams came from bodily functions, like if you went to bed with too much stew and dreamt of falling in a well. The higher dreams, those were spiritual. They often took place in hills, towers, or inside a church where the lighting was always suspiciously good. And then there were the dreams of monsters. Demons were frequent visitors in peasant dreamscapes. And they weren't metaphorical. They had names, smells, hobbies. There are actual accounts from the 14th century of people dreaming that demons were hiding under floorboards, whispering crop blights into the grain sacks. Again, subtlety was not a medieval strong suit. But demons weren't the only ones hanging around. Angels also made appearances, though usually less chatty. A glowing figure handing you a loaf of bread was interpreted as a good omen unless the loaf was black. Then it was famine. Historians still debate whether these dream visitations were remnants of older pagan beliefs dressed up in Christian robes. The overlap is suspicious. Take the spirit of the hearth, who shows up in dreams warning you to stoke the fire better. Christian angels didn't usually micromanage heating systems. You turn over in your straw bed, and the moonlight shifts across the wall. Someone nearby mutters in their sleep. Maybe they're dreaming of the same thing. In some villages, people believe shared dreams were realm messages from the spirit world passed through multiple minds like some ghostly group chat. One story, from a Welsh parish, tells of 3 villagers who dreamt the same night that their chapel roof had caught fire. They rushed there at dawn. The roof was intact, but a large bird had built a nest atop the cross. A week later, lightning struck that very spot. Was the dream prophetic? Coincidence? Or thatching? Still up for debate. Oh, and let's not forget sleep demons, a kind that sat on your chest and made it impossible to breathe. These were later interpreted as sleep paralysis, but back then, they were solid evidence that the devil was doing yoga on your ribcage. To ward them off, people tucked charms under their pillows, bits of iron, bits of blessed wax, even tiny figurines carved from ash wood. One brave soul supposedly kept a dried toad in a pouch sewn into his pillow. Did it work? Hard to say. He did stop having the dreams. He also got married and moved to a nicer house. For elation. Possibly. Then there were the dream fairs. Yes, that was a thing. Some festivals encouraged people to recount their strangest dreams in public. It was entertainment, but also insurance. You never knew which dream might be a message worth heeding, or something the priest would want to write down in his suspiciously large notebook. You close your eyes again, drifting toward sleep. The cottage creaks. A mouse scurries somewhere in the rafters. And just as your mind starts slipping, a disembodied voice in your dream mutters, "Don't forget to milk the cow." You wake up in a cold sweat. Morning chores await. You've moved now, not in space, but in status. You're no longer curled up on a peasant's straw mat. Tonight, you're reclined on a narrow wooden cot inside a dimly lit physician's chamber, somewhere in 14th century Salerno. There are jars lining the shell spouters, pickled frogs, bits of dried root. A mortar and pestle sits nearby, stained with whatever potion was last ground. The doctor's out cold in the corner chair, snoring beneath a fur blanket. But you're staring up at the rafters, because something strange is happening behind your eyelids. See, according to the medical minds of the Middle Ages, your dreams aren't divine or devilish. At least, not entirely. They're biological. Dreams, they said, are the body's murmurs, its digestion, its humors, its internal weather. Medieval physicians borrowed heavily from ancient Greek theories, especially the ideas of Galen and Hippocrates, who suggested that dreams could reflect imbalances in the body's 4 humors: blood, flame, yellow bile, and black bile. A dream filled with flames and bloodshed. Probably too much yellow bile. A dream of drowning in soup. You guessed it, flame. Delightful. And of course, digestion played a staring role. Eat onions before bed and you might dream of arguments. Eat cheese, and you might dream of music. This sounds oddly specific, but there were actual dream menus, written down lists of foods and the types of dreams they might inspire. If nothing else, medieval medicine was deeply committed to overthinking your midnight snack. There's even a 12th century medical compendium that claims dreaming of ladders indicates that your stomach is too dry. No explanation was provided. Just ladder equals drainess. Got it. Now, here's the fun part. Some doctors believe that dreams could diagnose illnesses before symptoms appeared. You might dream of flying feeling weightless and your physician would nod gravely and say, excess wind in the stomach. Or if you dreamt of caves or tombs, it might mean constipation. Naturally. Still, not everyone agreed. Historians still argue whether these medical interpretations were widely accepted or just the pet theories of a few over-caffeinated monks with access to too many Roman scrolls. But some physicians took things further. They began cataloging dreams in relation to the planets. Yes, planetary alignment affected your dreams, they claim. Dreaming during the hour of Mars might bring violent visions. Venus, on the other hand, promised dreams of beauty or sensual encounters. Saturn. Nightmares. Always nightmares. Poor Saturn. So you weren't just dreaming randomly. You were a fleshy antenna, picking up celestial radio signals while you slept. And of course, like everything medieval, there were contradictions. One physician might say dreaming of fire indicates an approaching fever. Another might say it means your neighbors are planning to gossip about you. Or both. Probably both. You roll over in your physician's cot, the wood creaking beneath you. A cold draft snakes in from under the door. You pull the blanket tighter, and feel the hard lump of something beneath your pillow. You reach under and find a dried orange peel. That's no accident. People in the Middle Ages often used fragrant herbs and citrus peels to sweeten their dreams. Lavender, sage, rosemary, they weren't just for stews. They were medieval aromatherapy, stuffed into pillows or burned near the bed to encourage pleasant visions. One 15th century manual even recommends sleeping beside a warm stone rubbed with mint oil to ward off unseemly dream thoughts. Whether it worked or not is anyone's guess. But the belief endured. Even now, some modern dream pillows still echo these herbal recipes. Let's not forget the dream control crowd. Yes, even back then, people tried to influence what they saw in their sleep. Certain breathing patterns, nighttime prayers, or chants were believed to guide the mind into more desirable visions. Want to dream of your future spouse? There's a specific prayer for that. Want to avoid dreaming of frogs eating your toes? Another prayer. Probably longer. And while most of this happened among the literate elite, bits of it trickled down. Local healers and wise women, many of whom were likely more intuitive than their male physician counterparts, used dreams to spot illness, guide herbal treatments, or give advice. Often, they were more trusted than the robed doctor who smelled like boiled turnips. Now, you begin to slip into sleep. Your body is warm beneath the blanket, but your mind is restless. You dream of a well. You lower a bucket, but instead of water, up comes a fish wearing a crown, reciting Latin backwards. According to one medical manual, that's a sign of digestive disruption caused by a melancholic imbalance. According to you, it's just weird. Still, as the dream fades and morning nears, you whisper to yourself the same question that's echoed through medieval bedrooms for centuries. Was that a dream from my body or a message from beyond? You wake now in stone-cold silence, curled into a nook of a half-frozen cathedral, wrapped in your cloak, spine sore from the carved bench beneath you. Candlelight flickers near the altar, throwing long shadows of saints across the marble floor. Your eyelids feel heavy, not from fatigue exactly, but from the weight of something unseen, something moral. Because tonight, your dreams are being watched. You see, in medieval theology, dreams weren't just biological byproducts or celestial postcards. They were moral documents. Tiny trials of your soul, scribbled nightly and reviewed at dawn. What you dreamed, especially the sinful parts, could reveal not just who you were but what you were hiding. Dreams were confession. Let's say you dream of stealing bread. You'd wake, sweating, and hurry to a priest not because you'd stolen anything, but because perhaps deep down you'd wanted to. And desire, even dreamed, could damn you. According to church teaching, even involuntary thoughts and dreams could reflect interior moral rot. Sin was like mold, visible only when it had already spread. Augustine, that heavy hitter of early Christian theology, once argued that while you couldn't always control dreams, the content might still reveal your spiritual laziness. Especially if you weren't fasting. Or if you'd skipped mass. Or looked at Sister Beatrix for 1 second too long. And this wasn't a fringe idea. Monastic rules in some orders included explicit instructions about dreams. Some monks were required to report dreams of lust, pride, or wrath to their superiors. Imagine that, groggily stumbling into morning prayers only to admit, "Father, I dreamed of punching Brother Robert in the face while wearing a crown of thorns." Now, to be fair, not everyone thought dream sins were real sins. Historians still argue whether medieval confession manuals truly counted dream lust the same way they counted actual lust. But even if not equal, it was close enough to be spiritually itchy. And the church had a method for scratching that itch. Priests trained in interpreting dreams would use them to sniff out hidden guilt. It would say, "Father, I dreamed of drowning in a red river." He might reply, that's your anger toward your mother. Or worse, say nothing at all. Just raise one eyebrow and write something in a little leather notebook. That red river might haunt you all year. And don't even think about dreaming of intimacy. Sensual dreams, especially those involving real people from your village, were the spiritual equivalent of leaving the church door open in a storm. Unmarried women who confessed such dreams were sometimes made to fast, do penance, or recite psalms while kneeling in snow. Men got off slightly easier. Of course. Now, if the dream featured devils, that was almost expected. Temptation was everywhere, even in sleep. There are accounts of monks dreaming of demonic women offering wine, song, and, occasionally, board games. No, really. One manuscript from the 12th century includes a record of a monk who dreamt he played des with a demon and lost. The punishment. A month of silence. No des games. Ever. You shift on the cold bench. Your breath fogs before you. The candle flickers again, just slightly, and for a moment it looks like a face forming in the wax. Nope. Just tired. Still, this fear of dream sin crept into every corner of medieval life. Parents warned children to pray before bed, lest their dreams betray them. Lovers whispered at night, afraid of dreaming too vividly. And confessors. They listened carefully. Because even the most respected abbots might one day dream of feasting, dancing, or forbid the thought sleeping through maidens. Some friars argued that certain dreams were planted by demons. These weren't your fault, necessarily, but they were still dangerous. Think of it like someone slipping a forged letter into your mailbox. You didn't write it. But if you read it and liked it, you might still be guilty. That logic led to some truly uncomfortable sermons, where priests warned entire congregations not to enjoy their dreams too much. If it makes you smile, one preacher warned, then it is likely not from God. So much for dream happiness. On the other end of the spectrum, there were penitents who wanted to be punished for their dreams. Some monks self-flagellated after vivid dreams of food or affection. One abbot supposedly slept on a bed of nettles for a week after dreaming of kissing a statue of the Virgin Mary. Mixed signals, that one. But not every dream was doom and guilt. Sometimes, confession through dreaming led to peace. There are recorded moments of monks having dreams where they were gently corrected by holy figures, a soft reminder rather than a fiery judgment. A nun dreaming of Christ handing her a single flower might interpret it as a sign her prayers were heard, even if she'd been doubting. You sigh, half asleep now. The candle melts lower. A far-off bell rings. The hour. And just before you drift off again, you murmur a little prayer, not to avoid the dream, but to soften its edges. Because tonight, whatever appears behind your eyelids might be judged by sunrise. Tonight, you're alone in a narrow chamber, the shutters pulled tight against the wind, and the hearth still faintly warm from an earlier fire. You're lying on a sagging feather mattress, not the worst place you've slept, but your thoughts aren't on comfort. They're on that kind of dream. The one you wouldn't dare tell your confessor. The one that creeps in like smoke through a crack in the wall. Because yes, medieval people dreamed of that, too. And no, they didn't always wake up feeling refreshed. In the Middle Ages, erotic dreams weren't just awkward. They were spiritual landmines, tangled in guilt, sin, and sometimes oddly prophecy. Picture this. You're a devout nun. You eat nothing but turnips, sleep 4 hours a night, and spend your waking life praying for the souls of others. And yet one night a dream comes. Sensual, vivid, and horrifying in its clarity. You wake up in a panic, clutching your rosary, convinced Satan himself tiptoed into your subconscious. This wasn't just shameful. It was dangerous. Now, technically speaking, the church understood that dreams were involuntary. You couldn't control what your mind conjured in sleep. But if you enjoyed it even just a little, that was a problem. A big, confessional, guilt-drenched problem. So many manuals warned against delighting in such dreams, even post-waking. You weren't supposed to replay it. Not even mentally. Good luck with that. And yet, here's where things get stranger. Some medieval thinkers believed these dreams could be messages, not just temptations. For example, a knight might dream of a seductive woman offering him wine, only to later find himself betrayed in real life. The dream, they said, was symbolic. Pleasure brings danger. Historians still argue whether the erotic dreams recorded in monastic texts were honest confessions or dramatized morality tales designed to scare others into piety. But many scholars agree that the line between desire and warning was often blurred. Just like the dream itself. Theologians, of course, had opinions. Thomas Aquinas wrote that nocturnal emissions were not necessarily sinful if they occurred without the consent of the will. Yes, the consent of the will became a serious theological category. Entire debates hinged on whether your sleeping self was too willing. You shift under your wool blanket, trying not to think about how many monks argued about this while scribbling into candlelit margins. In popular culture, these dreams were often attributed to supernatural seducers incubi and succubi. The incubus, a male demon, would visit women in sleep and, well, you get the idea. The succubus did the same to men. These beings weren't figments of a guilty conscience. They were considered real, with elaborate theories about how they collected seed and delivered it elsewhere. Yes, Medieval demonology got very weird, very fast. There are trial records from witch hunts where women confess not under torture, just through sheer religious fervor that they'd been visited by demons in their sleep. Some claim to feel pressure on their chest, whispers in their ears, even warmth where no one should be. The church's reaction? Complex. Some priests advised more prayers. Some suggested fasting. Others offered holy relics under the pillow, usually bones of obscure saints or splinters of true crosses. One text even recommended sleeping with a dagger under the bed to ward off nocturnal visitors. Why demons would fear knives isn't explained. But while the clergy panicked and theologians debated, ordinary people often approached these dreams with a kind of wary resignation. They were part of lie. Like tooth-aches. Or tax collectors. One merchant in 14th century Florence kept a dream diary not for moral reasons, but because he believed. These dreams gave him insights into future business deals. He once dreamed of lying with a woman made of honey, and the next day, he invested in a shipment of sugar cane. It made him rich. Coincidence? Probably. But he wrote, she returned in dreams thrice more. I always listened. Not every erotic dream ended in guilt or fire. Some saints even described sensual dreams as saints and framed them as tests. Saint Teresa of Avila once wrote of a dream so vivid, so ecstatic, that she was unsure whether it was from God or from something darker. It left her trembling, and also slightly smug. Again, medieval dream logic was nothing if not flexible. You roll onto your side now, the candle nearly gone. A faint breeze slips under the door. You close your eyes and feel the shadows dance across your thoughts. And just before you fall asleep, you wonder if the dream brings both pleasure and fear. Is it a sin? A test? Or simply a reminder that you're human even when you sleep? You're somewhere. Between waking and sleeping now, perched on the edge of a thin straw mattress in a humble cottage. Outside, a rooster's early crow pierces the pre-dawn gloom. But inside your dream, that rooster has much more to say, and it's not just cock-a-doodle-doo. Tonight, animals speak, judge, and even punish, sometimes more fairly than humans. In medieval dream lore, animals were far more than background scenery. They were messengers, symbols, and occasionally, moral arbiters. Dreaming of a wolf could signal danger or betrayal, but dreaming of a clever fox might mean upcoming cunning or deceit. And if you dreamed that a rooster accused you of that, well, hold on tight. There's a peculiar story from a 13th century English manor where a nobleman dreamed that his barnyard rooster spoke to him, calling out his dishonesty in managing the estate's funds. When he awoke, he was shaken, and rumors swirled that the dream was a divine warning. Whether it was or not, the dream haunted him through many council meetings. Sometimes animals weren't just symbolic, they literally taught. Dream reports in monastic archives describe donkeys lecturing dreamers on their failings or cats glaring accusingly from shadowed corners. Of course, these were usually seen as allegories, but that didn't stop the dreamer from waking in a cold sweat. Historians still debate whether these animal dream figures were remnants of older pagan beliefs blending with Christian symbolism, or simply imaginative storytelling. The overlap is undeniable. For example, the talking animal motif is widespread in folklore worldwide, from Aesop's fables to Norse myths, and the Middle Ages were no exception. A donkey in a dream might symbolize humility or stubbornness, but in some dream books, it's also a messenger of truth, especially if it spoke Latin. Yes, Latin-speaking donkeys were a medieval favorite. One famous story tells of a donkey who revealed a secret plot against a king in a dream, saving the realm from disaster. The king rewarded the donkey with a golden bridle and a place in court. Okay, maybe not, but it's fun to imagine. The dream dictionary tradition from this era is both fascinating and frustrating. Dreamers could consult a collection of symbols where animals, objects, and actions were assigned meanings. However, these dictionaries often contradicted each other. A snake might mean wealth in one book, betrayal in another, and simply indigestion in a third. One odd entry claimed that dreaming of a dog wagging its tail meant good fortune. Unless the dog was wet, then it meant rain. Clear enough, right? Animals in dreams were also linked to the four humors and the seasons. For example, dreaming of bears in winter might suggest the dreamer was repressing emotions, while dreaming of rabbits in spring promised fertility. These layers of meaning made dreams a kind of riddle, a puzzle to be solved before breakfast. And sometimes, animals acted as judges in the dream world. In a bizarre 12th century case, a man dreamed he was put on trial before a court of forest creatures. A badger accused him of greed, a fox of deceit, and a wise old owl served as judge. The verdict? That he should mend his ways or suffer the consequences, dream world or not. There's a wonderful fringe theory among some scholars that these animal judges were actually medieval expressions of conscience or communal judgment, an imaginative way to express feelings of guilt or societal pressure. You lie back now, the early light creeping through the cracks in the wood. A cat brushes your leg in the dream, purring secrets you almost understand. You wonder if, in some way, your subconscious is trying to speak in code using creatures you trust or fear to tell you something about yourself. And as you drift toward waking, You recall a phrase from a dusty manuscript, "The beasts of the night reveal what men hide by day." It's a perfect thought to carry into the morning. Now you're flipping through the fragile pages of a medieval dream book, a heavy tome with worn leather covers and pages mottled by time and candle wax. You expect clear answers, a neat guide to interpreting your dreams. Instead, you find chaos, conflicting meanings, overlapping symbols, and a frustrating lack of agreement. Medieval dream dictionaries were like the Wild West of sleep interpretation. One book declares snakes as omens of wealth, while another warns they signify treachery, and yet a third claims they simply mean indigestion. It's as if every author was writing from their own experience or regional superstition, with no universal standard. This makes sense when you consider the sources. Some dream books were translations or adaptations of ancient texts from Greek philosophers, Roman scholars, or Arabic mystics. Others were local compilations, influenced by folk beliefs, religious teachings, or even political motives. Imagine waking up after a strange dream, consulting one of these books, only to get advice like, if you dream of fire, prepare for victory. But in another, fire signifies loss. The only safe bet: always carry a wet cloth. Interestingly, some medieval dream interpreters believed that the timing of the dream affected its meaning. Dreams at midnight were pure and prophetic. Those at dawn were often false or deceptive. This aligns with older traditions where the witching hour was both feared and revered. Historians still debate how seriously people took these dictionaries. Were they a trusted tool, or more of a whimsical pastime? Evidence suggests both. Some nobles and clerics owned multiple dream books and consulted them often, while common folk relied more on oral traditions. One curious entry in a 15th century dream book advised that dreaming of water meant your soul was in flux, but only if the water was clear. Murky water, on the other hand, warned of betrayal or sickness, which, honestly, feels like a pretty accurate metaphor. The dream dictionaries also included strange entries like dreaming of rats means fortune, but only if the rats are carrying cheese. Otherwise, bad luck. This level of detail shows how much imagination was poured into interpreting every twitch of the dreamer's mind. And yet, the contradictions reveal something about medieval thought, a world in flux, blending old pagan symbolism, Christian doctrine, and practical daily fears. Dreams were a puzzle no one could solve completely, but everyone felt compelled to try. You close the book gently, aware that your own dreams might be just as ambiguous. You wonder which dictionary your mind is following tonight. You're now feverish and restless, sprawled out on a narrow cot in a chamber that smells faintly of herbs and mildew. Outside, rain taps rhythmically on a leaded window, while inside, the air feels thick and heavy. You can feel the weight of sickness pressing down on your body, and it presses into your dreams, too. In the medieval world, illness and dreaming were closely intertwined. When fever gripped you, your mind didn't just rest, it raced, conjuring vivid, often terrifying visions that blended physical discomfort with spiritual messages. Dreaming was sometimes seen as part of the disease process itself. People believed that sickness stirred the humors violently, creating heat and vapors that disturbed sleep and brought unsettling dreams. A high fever might cause you to dream of fire, or strange creatures crawling on your skin. A lingering cough might bring dreams of drowning. And the plague? Well, it inspired its own dark catalog of nightmares. Medical texts of the time included sections devoted to fever dreams, describing symptoms and dream types as if the dreams themselves were diagnostic tools. If you dreamt of shadows closing in, it was a sign the illness was worsening. If you dreamt of light or flight, you might be on the mend. There's a famous 14th century account of a man struck by the Black Death who dreamt of a procession of cloaked figures, some carrying sickles. He recognized them as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The dream terrified him, and it was taken by his community as an omen of his fate. Fever dreams weren't just personal, they affected the whole village. Families often gathered around the sick, listening as the patient recounted bizarre and fragmented visions, sometimes seeing this as a bridge to the supernatural world. These narratives were woven into local folklore and religious practice. But the connection between illness and dreams also had a practical side. Physicians and healers used dream reports to guide treatment, deciding when to apply bloodletting, herbs, or prayers. Some believed that dreams could reveal whether the patient's soul was prepared for death or would recover. However, not all scholars agree. Historians still debate whether medieval fever dreams were understood primarily as medical symptoms or spiritual experiences. The line between body and soul was porous in medieval thought, making such distinctions tricky. Your body itches as you drift, the shadows lengthening. You dream of dark waters swirling beneath a burning sky, of whispered voices chanting prayers in an unknown tongue. You wake suddenly, breath-ragged, and wonder if your dreams brought you closer to recovery or to the beyond. You find yourself wrapped in velvet and fur, reclining in a royal chamber adorned with tapestries and flickering candlelight. The scent of spiced wine lingers in the air, and the faint murmur of distant voices suggests courtly intrigue. Tonight, your dreams hold the power not just to amuse or warn, but to shape kingdoms. Medieval rulers often believed that dreams were more than private affairs, they were omens and guidance that could influence political decisions. A king dreaming of a crowned eagle might interpret it as divine approval for a new campaign, while a dream of a crumbling castle might foreshadow rebellion. One famous medieval king, whose name often comes up in dream lore, reportedly dreamt of a lion tearing apart a serpent. Interpreted as a sign of victory over his enemies, this dream allegedly propelled him to wage war with renewed fervor. Whether it was a true dream or royal propaganda remains a subject of scholarly debate. Dreams influenced alliances, marriages, and even executions. Courtiers would recount their dreams to monarchs, hoping to gain favor or warn of treachery. In some cases, a royal dream was enough to spark a political purge. No trial needed. Historians still argue about how much power dreams truly held in royal decision-making. Some see them as tools of psychological manipulation or religious justification. Others believe they were genuinely influential. Beyond politics, royal dreams were also carefully recorded. Chronicles and diaries from courts across Europe include detailed accounts of rulers' visions, blending myth, religion, and personal reflection. Imagine the pressure of knowing that a single dream could determine the fate of thousands, whether to march armies, seal treaties, or condemn traitors. You close your eyes, imagining yourself a king whose dreams weigh as heavily as the crown. You wonder, do dreams reflect reality, or do they shape it? As the candle guttering low casts flickering shadows, you drift into sleep, carrying the burden of kingdoms upon your mind. You're lying on a rough wooden pallet in a small village home, the scent of damp earth and burning peat filling the air. Outside, storm clouds gather, and the sky darkens unnaturally. In your dream, you see rivers overflowing, eclipses blotting out the sun, and fires sweeping through fields. When you awaken, you hurry to warn your neighbors, but they dismiss your words, blaming bad cheese or overactive imaginations. In medieval Europe, many believed that dreams could be prophetic, foretelling natural disasters, wars, or the death of leaders. Yet, communities were often skeptical of such warnings, especially when they came from common folk rather than clergy or nobility. There are recorded cases where villagers reported collective dreams of floods or plagues, only to see such events unfold weeks or months later. These shared dreams created a complex mix of fear, hope, and denial. Historians still debate whether these prophetic dreams influenced medieval decision-making or were merely coincidences retroactively linked to real events. The fine line between genuine foresight and superstition remains a topic of scholarly discussion. Dreams of eclipses and floods were often interpreted as divine messages or punishments for communal sins. Sometimes, they spurred religious processions or fasting, while other times they were ignored until the inevitable happened. One chronicler noted that a man who dreamed of a burning sun warned his town of coming famine, but no one listened. The famine came, and the man's reputation shifted from madman to prophet. You shiver, the storm outside intensifying. The dream's shadow lingers, a reminder that sometimes, the night holds secrets that daylight refuses to see. You are standing now in a bustling medieval courtroom, where the murmur of townsfolk mixes with the stern voices of magistrates. But this is no ordinary trial. Tonight, the evidence is not forged documents or eyewitness accounts, it is a dream. In medieval Europe, there were strange and rare occasions when dreams themselves were presented as testimony. A neighbor's dream of theft, adultery, or betrayal could be used in legal disputes, sometimes to the shock of all involved. Imagine being accused of a crime not because someone saw you, but because another swore they dreamed you committing it. The dreamer's vision, vivid and detailed, was considered a kind of spectral witness. This practice, though uncommon, reflects the medieval blending of the spiritual and the legal. Courts were often entwined with ecclesiastical authority, where supernatural experiences held weight. Historians still debate how widespread or effective such dream trials were, but records do exist, especially in rural areas where superstition mingled with law. One famous case from the 14th century involved a farmer accused of stealing livestock based solely on a villager's dream. The verdict was cautious, but the accused suffered social stigma regardless. These dream accusations were fraught with danger. False claims could ruin reputations, yet dismissing a dream could be seen as disrespecting divine signs. You watch as the courtroom weighs ethereal visions against hard facts. The judge strokes his beard thoughtfully, the crowd tense with anticipation. It's a moment that blurs the lines between reality and imagination, law and faith. As you step back, the murmurs rise again. You wonder, in a world where dreams hold such power, how much can one truly trust what they see when asleep? You're in a dimly lit room, the air heavy with the scent of burning herbs and whispered prayers. A woman lies on a simple bed, murmuring in her sleep, her brow furrowed. Her dream is restless, vivid, a dance with shadowy figures, horns curling into the darkness, louder ringing like broken glass. Tomorrow, she will stand accused of consorting with the devil himself. In the medieval imagination, witches were thought to attend secret nocturnal gatherings, the infamous Sabbaths where they danced with demons and made unholy pacts. These dreams were often indistinguishable from waking experiences for those who suffered from them. Such dreams weren't considered mere fantasies but real spiritual journeys, sometimes inflicted by malevolent forces. Women who described these experiences were frequently suspected of witchcraft, especially when their dreams included the devil's ball or meetings in eerie forests. Trial records abound with confessions often coarse that described vivid dream visits to these gatherings. The boundaries between nightmare, dream, and waking reality were dangerously thin. Historians still argue to what extent these dreams were psychological phenomena, social scapegoating, or manipulated confessions. Regardless, their impact was devastating. The dance with horned beasts symbolized temptation, power, and damnation, a terrifying inversion of sacred rites. The dreamer's body might bear the marks of these nocturnal visits, interpreted as the devil's brand. Communities, terrified by the unseen, often responded with fear, accusations, and ultimately, execution. Burning at the stake was a grim punctuation to these haunted nights. Yet, some scholars suggest that these dreams were also a way for oppressed women to articulate trauma and resistance, hidden in the language of the supernatural. As you lie in the shadows, the woman's murmurs echo haunting melody of fear, power, and survival. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for the waking world's relative safety, yet mindful of the darkness that dreams can bring. You're now wandering the narrow, cobblestone streets of a medieval town at midnight, moonlight casting silver shadows on timber-framed houses. Your feet are bare, the chill biting through your threadbare cloak. Ahead, a friar walks with slow, measured steps, eyes glazed not from drink, but from something deeper. Sleepwalking was no unknown phenomenon in medieval times, but it carried layers of meaning. A sleepwalker was often seen as a soul caught between worlds, neither fully awake nor asleep, caught in a liminal space where dreams and reality blurred. The friar's nightly wanderings were sometimes interpreted as spiritual journeys, perhaps an unconscious search for salvation or penitence. But others whispered darker things: possession, madness, or the influence of restless spirits. Medieval medical texts tried to explain sleepwalking as a disturbance of the humors or the soul's flight during sleep. Some advised special prayers or charms to protect the sleepwalker and those around them. The townspeople often watched these nocturnal pilgrims with a mix of fear and fascination. It wasn't unusual for families to tie a string to a sleepwalker's finger or place bells nearby to prevent harm. Historians still debate whether sleepwalking was understood primarily as a medical condition, a spiritual crisis, or folklore. The answer likely shifted with region and culture. Your barefoot friar stops at a crossroads, raises his arms to the sky, and whispers prayers that drift like smoke. His dreaming, but also moving through the waking world, a bridge between realms. You follow at a distance. The night sounds muffled. The line between sleep and wakefulness feels thin, almost breakable. You wonder, if our souls wander when our bodies rest, what truths do they seek, and what dangers lurk in the in-between? As dawn approaches, the friar returns to his cell, slipping beneath the covers with a quiet sigh. His sleepwalk is over for now. You find yourself seated around a crackling fire, surrounded by villagers whispering of strange dreams, shared in hushed tones. The air is thick with the scent of pine and the soft rustle of night creatures. Tonight, dreams are not private but communal, a shared experience binding souls across the village. Shared dreams, where multiple people reported the same or similar visions, were a fascinating phenomenon in medieval times. Villagers often believed that spirits or ancestors visited communities through dreams, delivering warnings, guidance, or sometimes, curses. In some regions, reports of shared dreams prompted communal prayers, fasts, or even pilgrimages to sacred sites. The dream was seen as a bridge between the physical and spiritual worlds, a message meant for many. One remarkable case from the 13th century describes a village where several people dreamt of a mysterious figure cloaked in white, walking along the riverbank. The next day, a flood threatened the crops. The shared dream was taken as a warning, prompting swift action that saved the harvest. Scholars still debate whether these shared dreams were psychological phenomena influenced by rumor and collective anxiety or genuine spiritual experiences believed by the communities. Dreams could also reflect social dynamics. Shared nightmares about outsiders or traitors sometimes intensified distrust or reinforced communal bonds. The concept of spirits walking among the living was deeply embedded in medieval belief. Dreams were one of the few ways people felt connected to this unseen world. You listen closely as villagers described their visions: ghostly visitors, dancing lights, and voices calling names. The fire crackles, and shadows flicker like ghosts themselves. As you lean back, eyes heavy, you feel the mysterious power of shared dreams, a tapestry of stories woven from the sleeping minds of many. You wonder, as sleep claims you, what dreams do you share with those around you? And what do they say about your place in the world? You are now tucked away in a modest room, the flicker of a single candle, casting dancing shadows on the rough plaster walls. Outside, the world is quiet, but inside your dreams, the poorest of the poor find their escape. Tonight, you drift alongside a young maid's dreams, a fragile world where castles rise, feasts overflow, and warmth fills the cold. For the medieval lower classes, dreams were often a sanctuary from harsh realities. Though their waking hours were consumed by toil and scarcity, their sleep could conjure visions of abundance and comfort. Castles with gilded halls, tables laden with roasted meats, soft beds, and laughter. These dreams were bittersweet, a reminder of what was out of reach, but also a hopeful glimpse of something better. Dreaming of wealth or status was sometimes seen as a sign of divine favor or a glimpse of a future reward. However, these aspirations were often tinged with melancholy. Waking from such dreams could bring a sharp, itchy reminder of poverty's grip. Yet, the dreamer clung to these visions like a precious secret. Historians debate whether such dreams were common among the poor or mostly romanticized by later writers. But personal letters and folk tales hint at their prevalence. Some believe that dreaming of a better life was a way the soul nourished itself, preparing to endure another day of hardship. Others saw these dreams as warnings to remain humble, to seek virtue despite suffering. You imagine the maid stirring under her thin blanket, the dream fading but the hope lingering. Perhaps, in some way, these nightly visions helped carry her through the darkest days. As your own eyelids grow heavy, you think of her dreams and your own, woven from the same fabric of longing, fear, and the eternal human search for meaning. Now, as your breath slows and the candle gutters low, you feel yourself gently carried toward peaceful sleep, wrapped in the timeless mystery of dreams. Now, let the night's calm deepen. The images grow soft, like mist over a quiet lake at dawn. The worries of the day dissolve into shadows, and your breathing slows, steady and gentle. You are safe here, cradled by the whispers of centuries past, where dreams were portals, puzzles, and sometimes promises. Breathe deeply. Feel the cool air brush your skin. Imagine the faint rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of a slow river, the warmth of a hearth long cold but glowing still in memory. Sleep well. Tomorrow's dawn will bring new light, but for now, you are suspended between worlds, floating free, carried on the quiet wings of dreams.